Everyone. Today we are interviewing Chris Cammarata, a close friend of mine, a bigger brother to me in some sense. I call him Chris Cammarata. I'll give you the floor. If you can kind of give an introduction about who you are. What are you doing here in Houston?
Just a Jesus youth,
Mm-hmm.
if there's such a thing. I came to Houston for work a few months back, and since then it's just been a wild ride. Of course, we had coronavirus and all these other crazy things going on, but
Right.
It's been good. And I got to know the movement before I came here,
Mm-hmm.
and been walking with the movement for a little bit of time now. And so I was actually born in New York,
Mm-hmm.
but I only lived there till I was 5. But I came from a pretty average New York Italian Catholic family. I'm the oldest of 4. Both my parents work, and basically had a pretty normal American Catholic upbringing. Since I was 5, I lived in Florida, and honestly, it was a pretty normal childhood. But when I got older, I got to know the movement more, and they came at the right time in my faith journey. So when I was younger, I had studied philosophy, and I'd also, over time, wanted to learn more about the faith. So I had also started studying theology.
Mm-hmm.
But now I work in clinical systems, which everyone is always like, no idea what that is. So basically, I just work in medical IT, and we'll just leave it at that, which is what brought me here.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am.
That's good. I think that's the perfect segue maybe to the next question, which is, when did you first encounter the JY movement? When was that? If you can maybe pinpoint a certain time in your life where this is what Jesus Youth is, and this is that first encounter. If you can maybe speak about that.
Yeah, for sure. The first person I met from Jesus Youth actually was now Father Thomas Pulico.
Mm-hmm.
We had just kind of met through circumstance, and he was. I knew he was Jesus Youth, so I knew that Jesus Youth existed.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time I really got to know somebody from the movement, it was actually someone just invited me to dinner. So it wasn't anything too dramatic. It was just, hey, come over for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk, we'll eat, we'll pray. It was very simple. And in some ways, I think that kind of the simplicity of that was what attracted me. It was just a very heartfelt time. And that was my first experience of the movement, was just families and some young people who were just very sincere with their faith. And basically from there, I just kept coming back. And it was usually the same cycle. We'd eat and then we'd pray, and then I would come back next week and we'd eat and we'd pray.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually it just became a habit. And there were definitely a few really particular moments along the journey. Something that was really cool for me personally was that first encounter, real deep encounter with JY. Actually happened on the anniversary of my baptism.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. But then, there were other moments along the way after that. And I think for a while, I saw myself as someone who knew Jesus Youth existed and the movement was interesting, but at what point was I going to call myself a Jesus Youth?
Right.
And it's going to sound kind of funny, but it was actually a group photo.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically what happened was Archbishop Abraham Viro da Calandra had passed away, and we were having this memorial liturgy for him. And at the end, all the Jesus Youth got in the shot, and they were like, "Chris, get in the photo." And it sounds silly, but just that small thing at that moment just made me realize, I guess I am a Jesus youth, so I should get in the photo. And from that moment on, I started just calling myself a Jesus youth and really fell in love with the movement's lifestyle. And it's been a journey ever since.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And I think you mentioned it kind of briefly, but what was it about the movement that caught your attention? I think you mentioned simplicity, a little bit about the lifestyle. Maybe if you can elaborate on that. You experienced the movement through some people, but apart from that, what was it that kind of hooked you in and said that this is something I want to be a part of?
So I always joke to people that it was the food. The food is great, but actually what it really was growing up, there were a few years where I had actually been homeschooled just for a few years. And during that time, my mom taught me and my 3 other siblings. And that was a really joyous time of my life. People kind of have the stereotype that homeschooling, not a lot happens, but we actually were really active with other families that we knew. And just that experience of spending time together, and just as young Catholic families, or as kids in young Catholic families, there's just something really simple and pure about it. And I think when I saw the movement, that was one of the things that initially drew me to it, was that experience of just family life, just joy in the Lord like that. But over time, it grew, and I started to see how people in Jesus Youth, when they really embraced the lifestyle, they got deep, they got serious, and that attitude of just wanting to give every part of their lives to Jesus, regardless of the circumstances of their lives or where they came from or what they were doing. It didn't matter whether they were a priest or a father or a mother or a doctor or an accountant. It was just wherever they were in life, everything was just for Jesus, and Jesus was the priority in their lives. And that just really spoke to me. And I loved how it just was so adaptable to whatever was going on in their lives, and how you could be a very ordinary person, on the surface level, on the world's idea of what that was. And yet you have this extraordinary love for Jesus and this extraordinary mission in just the humble circumstances of quote unquote ordinary life. And that just spoke to me. And for me, where I was at my life at the time, it just, I don't know, it came at the right time in my life. I was kind of looking for who I was meant to be, and I knew I wanted to serve the Lord, but I didn't really know how. And just seeing how it didn't take anything extraordinary, it didn't take any just dramatic, superhuman feats.
Yeah, they wanted you for you.
Yeah. And all it needed for me, that the Lord needed for me, was a willing heart. He was going to accept me as I was, and other people in the movement were going to accept me for who I was. And that was a big lesson that I had to learn. And but it's a lesson I'm still learning. But that was something, maybe the thing that drew me most to Jesus Youth, was that freedom to be who I am with the Lord and with other people, and that mutual freedom, to be with others in that way.
Yeah, no, I think in my own experience also, I had the freedom to be who I am, who I want to be. Of course, I had to conform to the lifestyle or what Jesus calls me to be, but there's the idea that you are unique and that you give yourself wholeheartedly to Jesus, and in that sense, He kind of transforms you, and you do wonders for Him. And you said that it kind of came the right moment for you, where you were trying to figure out where you belong, who you want to be. And so, since joining the movement, how has your faith grown? Radically, I assume. And so, but how has the movement kind of been a catalyst for that? How do they kind of dive into the deep end with your faith?
So I had wanted actually to do full-timership, and I didn't get the opportunity. Or who knows, maybe someday. But I didn't get the chance to do full-timership like I had wanted to. but the Lord provided something even better.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really needed was a deeper kind of formation. So there was a program that has now been running for a few years
Mm-hmm.
in Florida where I encountered the movement, and it's called Amoris Christi. And the focus is much more on like just spiritual depth and praying with scripture and like learning the life of Christ and that kind of, I don't know, deep level formation.
Yeah.
And I did that. It's a 1-year program, and it was led by Sunil who we both know. And Sunil really became like my Chertan, like in the movement, really. He just helped me so much in an important time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So having like that older brother to accompany me in the movement, but also having that ability to get deep and get formed. And I got really passionate about formation in the movement. And so that was like something unique that I was blessed to receive, because the program was still pretty young when I was doing it. And I'm still receiving fruit from that. But honestly, there's been like a whole chapter after Amoris Christi of just like living the JY lifestyle. And that's honestly been a huge blessing for me, because it sounds almost so simple when we think about the 6 pillars and what they are. But the beauty of the 6 pillars is just that it's about the daily walk.
Yeah.
And it's not about like, you know, like I'm not checking off like this big pilgrimage or this big retreat. Those are important, but a lot of the journeying is day by day.
Right.
And having that daily walk and having that daily way to keep myself accountable and having those people who are there with me daily to help me to grow and to check me when I need to be checked and to listen when I need someone to listen. Like that's really how the movement has made me grow on a deep level. And, you know, I'm not like special or something like that. I just have an ordinary job and I'm content with that. But I have the right people in my life, and I have the people who are leading me to holiness and leading me to Christ and challenging me to be more Christ-like. And that's enough. Like I'm winning my holiness that way, you know?
Yeah. I think the emphasis is not that it's an overnight thing. It's not like you join something or you encounter the Lord and immediately overnight you are this holy figure. But like you said, it's in the daily actions. It's in how we walk every day with the lifestyle, with your daily commitment to the Lord, that you gradually kind of grow, you know, towards the Lord. And now you've been in America, you know, maybe your entire life, but I know you've also been to India, and you encountered the movement there. So now, you know, you're in Houston, you have the JY movement here also, but how has it differed, the movement in India versus the movement in America? The differences, the similarities, maybe what can we bring from, you know, our native country of Kerala and bring it back to here in America with the movement?
Yeah, I had gone to Kerala because I had wanted to see the movement at its roots. And it wasn't like some formal thing, it was an inspiration in my heart. I wanted to see where Jesus Youth came from and what made it what it was at the start. And sometimes you have to go to the roots of things. And so I went and I met all the founders of Jesus Youth and the first Lioners and those like early people who really made the movement what it is today. And that was really special. And I was also at Assembly, which was really cool. But what really stood out to me, I guess, were 2 things. One was how just, maybe it's partially a cultural thing, but people there in Jesus Youth were so generous, like so welcoming to me. And, you know, you'd hope you'd be welcoming to any guest, but I was like so overwhelmed by people's hospitality to me that like I almost felt bad. Like I almost felt guilty for just like how much people were sharing and how much people were willing to do for me. There was this one time where I was like taking the bus from one city to another, and the person who was supposed to take me, he couldn't do it. And so like this random college student who was also a Jesus Youth, he just helped me find my bus, and we took like a 2-hour bus ride to get to the next city. And like, that's crazy. Like, you know, that doesn't really happen here. And then I know there was another time where like this family just gave me like a gift that I knew for them was more money than it was for me. And that really touched me. And I still keep in touch with that family. They're in Trivandrum. And I remember like being so touched and I felt bad. And this elder in the movement there just said, look, this is just how it is among family. And that just stayed with me, that like really to see the movement as my family. Another thing that was really cool though, that I learned from that experience of Jesus Youth over in Kerala was like how willing people are to just initiate things. Like to just, their personal sense of mission is crazy. And sometimes I think we get into this mindset where I like have to kind of wait for my mission until someone tells me what to do, or, you know, like, okay, I think it's this, and I kind of wait for that confirmation. People in Kerala, I mean, not everyone, but like so many of the people I met are just like not that way. They're just like gung-ho. They're just like, they get an inspiration from the Lord and they're like, it looks like the Lord, I think it's the Lord, I'm gonna do it. And they just do it. And like maybe 3 months after that, it falls apart. But like, then they're just like, oh, whatever, on to the next thing. And so they start like a new thing. And just that freedom with their own personal sense of mission, you know, they're like trying to faithfully listen to the Lord and follow the Lord. But that kind of freedom and openness to their own personal mission, that was a huge help to me, especially because like I was just coming out of this intense formation time and I just kind of needed to know like, am I even going to do mission? Like, and so like seeing how it was actually a lot simpler than I was making it out to be in my head. It was just that openness to the Lord. That was a big help to me. And that's something that I try and carry with me. So yeah, it was a really cool experience and it helped me a lot for where I am now.
Yeah.
My dear friends, parents, and beloved children, I would like to introduce you something very special for the children and parents. Kairos Birds. Recently, a new initiative from Jesus Youth Movement. And this Kairos Birds specially meant for children and parents. Children are counted to be the most precious part of the society. Once Jesus was asked who will enter into the kingdom of heaven, he looked around and brought forth a small child and said, all those who become like children will go to heaven. Kairos Birds. And it will be very big instrument to be faithful, to be fruitful, to be beloved children of Jesus. May God bless you.
So, Chris, you've been to both India and now you live in America and you experienced both cultures. So this is a question that's kind of cliche, kind of very general. I think everyone's heard it. You know, what are some of the problems that youth of America face today? Whether it be an Indian youth, an American youth, whoever it is in America. What are the challenges that they face today, specifically when it comes to their faith, how they interact with it, how they grow in it? And what do you think maybe is that first step they can take to combat that? How to move away from that lukewarm feeling of their faith and fight that and grow with that fire in their heart?
Yeah. I think it helps for me to think of this question in terms of the things that I've struggled with.
Right.
And for me, especially like growing up, not so much now, but when I was growing up, a big struggle for me was loneliness. We went to church every Sunday. We were always faithful as a family growing up, and I was really blessed with faithful parents. And they gave me so much of my instruction in the faith and teaching me how to pray. And I'm always so grateful to my family for what they've given me in the faith. But even with that, it's easy to be lonely, which sounds crazy. But you can be surrounded by great people and still have that.
Right.
And I think for a lot of young people today, even very faithful young people, there's that loneliness there. There's like a longing in young people's hearts for more and for like fulfillment. And the world doesn't offer it. And we know that. Like we know it because we hear it, in church and in the scripture. But to really like own that and go and dive deep into that struggle and meet the Lord there. That's something that not a lot of young people know how to do. And I think really that's the mission of, evangelization today.
Yeah.
I know that it's kind of like, it sounds like grand words, but I think it's true. We need people who can speak to that loneliness and speak to that longing in young people. I know that there's a lot of falsehood out there in the world today, and the world and the flesh and the devil, they're all spouting all these lies. And I love apologetics, and I help with an apologetics website. But to me, the first issue, even before truth, is to know goodness.
Yeah.
And to know how loved we are by the Lord and how much the Lord loves us. Like me, how much he loves me personally. That is just, to me, the first priority.
The most profound thing.
Yeah, and that's where it starts. To experience the goodness of the Lord, to taste the Lord's goodness, like the Psalm says. And then from there, young people will want to hear the truth.
Right.
Because, if you start with the truth, sometimes like the truth is like it can be a tool, but it can also be like a sword. And some people just like try and strike other people with it. And we can't start there. We have to start with an experience of the Lord's love. And if you begin there, young people will
take off.
Yeah, and they'll come running to the truth. And so, yeah, that's what I think is kind of the big issue, and that's all across the world. It's kind of amazing. Like we can be so connected, and it's been so important during COVID. But you and I both know, like, there's plenty of loneliness during the pandemic, and we need to all the more to come together and to overcome that loneliness with one another, but most of all with the Lord.
It's like you said, that a lot of the youth in America or all over the world, they experience loneliness. And like you said, Christ's love is the only true and the good thing. So when you bring Christ to another person, he fills that void. And from there, that fire is kind of sparked and you grow in that. And I wholeheartedly believe that message that Christ's love is what ignites and sets you free from that bondage of loneliness. So I think the follow-up to that is, what advice can you give to the youth of America, particularly because you are a unique face here in the movement, considering it is something that has its roots in India, but now that you're here in the movement, what advice can you give to the American youth about how they can encounter the movement, and how can you encourage them with your words that the movement is something beautiful and true and that they should be a part of?
Yeah. I think it comes with two parts. On the one side, like, what do we do as a movement? What do I know? I'm not some elder, but from what I've seen, I think what's so important is always that we take the best of where we come from and we learn how to make it a part of where we are now. And when I think about what it means to be a missionary, we're a missionary movement, I think of what Jesus himself did, where Jesus took his divine nature and he matched it with his human nature. He took where he came from, but he came to where we were. And he was able to plant his roots in our lives, in our ordinary lives, and walk with us in all the circumstances of our life. And I think that's really what it means to be a missionary. You set up camp for life, basically, with whoever it is you're walking with. So that's kind of what I see from the movement side of things. And I don't think that's like some new thing. I think it's just living out the gospel. But what would I say to youth here in America who have heard of Jesus Youth and, they're like, is it for me, is it not? I guess don't get so worried about what the movement looks like, or
Do I fit in?
yeah, do I fit in, or that kind of thing. Just allow the Lord to speak to you in that moment, and see what's going on, and be open to it. Give it a shot. That's what it was for me. It wasn't this dramatic thing. I had never had any real connection with Indian culture before Jesus Youth. I didn't really know anything about it. Obviously, a lot's changed since then. But for me, it wasn't like the movement had to show itself off. It didn't have to flaunt something that it had. It was just people being genuine, and people taking the time to invite me. And I know for them, it took them leaving their comfort zone a little bit, and I had to leave my comfort zone a little bit to respond to that. But the fact that we were both willing in that moment, that led to a beautiful start of a relationship, not just with those people, but like for me and Jesus Youth as a whole. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'd say to that.
Yeah, hearing that, and having the movement being established for about 35 years, and being in America for maybe just as long, with your experience and with your encounters with the people and the movement in itself, how do you think the movement can grow in the coming years? Tomorrow, next month, in the coming years, how can it grow to encounter more people and truly live out what it says it is, which is a missionary movement at the service of the church?
Yeah, I think we're in a unique time, not just for the world, but even just for the movement. Now, like you said, we're about 35 years in as a movement, and the first generation of the movement that came to America, they're getting older. Not no worries, like we're not like in terrible peril or something like that, but they're getting older. They're not young people like we are anymore. The movement came here, it migrated here. It's not like it was in Kerala, where it started in college campuses, peer-to-peer, that sort of thing. The movement came here with families and migrants and workers. And now those people have kids of their own. And now those kids are the ones leading the movement in the years to come.
Right.
So I think we're like in this unique time, like now college ministry is starting to take off here, slowly but surely. But now, of course, like with COVID, like, okay, well, what do we do with that?
Yeah.
But honestly, the mission continues. Whether there's a pandemic or whatever other disaster comes out there, God always wins. But we have to do our part in this mission. And I don't know what mission looks like exactly, but I know that we have to keep listening to the Lord and walk with that. Yeah, and then something else that we had mentioned before a little bit is how, we take where we came from and we meet it with where we are. And I think that's a really integral part of the movement too, like being a missionary movement. We have to kind of let our roots sink in, I guess. Being a missionary is about taking the best of where we were and bringing it to where we are. And I think that there's a lot of beauty in the roots of Jesus Youth. And now we're here in America, and we take that and we bring it to the circumstances of life here. So there's a way to show the best of our tradition without losing the present, because when you lose the present, the future goes with it, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think that the movement now, again, it's in a unique time. It's this mission of transition almost between where it came from and where it is. And my hope is that in the years ahead, that we'll see more youth here, that the youth who came here as kind of second generation immigrants and such, that they'll be able to bring their experience and the experience of their parents and maybe even their grandparents and bring that to their peers and bring that to other people they know in school or in their workplace. And I think that that's what will really allow the movement to thrive here, because again, we're not losing where we were, but we're also bringing in the newness of where we are.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that the responsibility kind of falls on the second generation, or youth like you and me, which is daunting, but I have a lot of hope, and I'm looking forward to that, because we live here in this time, in this present culture, and we take what we know and what we have, and we kind of assimilate it, and we show them kind of the best of both worlds. We're not stuck in the past, like you said. So we're taking what we know and we bring it forward. And I think we're in that transition period, and we're the ones that kind of bring the light forward. So I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious about this, but how did your family react when you first encountered the movement? You know, what was your reaction? What did they think about it? Had they even heard about the movement before?
It's funny because my parents hadn't heard about the movement either. And their initial reaction was kind of, it was kind of like that. It was like, it wasn't bad. It was just, they had never heard of Jesus Youth before. And I remember like trying to explain what the movement was and all that kind of stuff. And saying like, yeah, a lot of them are Roman Catholic, a lot of them are also Syro-Malabar Catholic. And they're like, what's that? And so then that's a whole conversation. But my parents are like really faith-filled, and they've stayed close to the church, and at different times over the years, like they've worked for the church. So, you know, they're very faith-filled people. I was never worried that they were going to see the movement as something bad.
Right.
And I was very blessed with that. And I think we share that lack of worry. Like they weren't worried that I was going to do something crazy, you know?
Right. They give you that freedom to choose.
Yeah. And I really appreciated that. And I think it's something that I hope for other people too.
Right.
That their parents would give them that trust and that freedom that I received. So there's a lot more to Jesus Youth than even we're aware of a lot of the time. And we really owe that to the fact that we are a movement. Like we are not just
sitting in one place, stagnant.
And we're not just a group of people. This is something that the Holy Spirit's inspired, right? Like he's guided us. He's brought us to this point, and he's going to lead us past this point to something even greater. So like we're not in control in the end, right? And I think that having that openness to the Spirit is what's led the movement to this point. But I think it's also what led me to the movement. It was by God's grace, like a moment of openness on my part. And I think for other people, for parents of youth who are wanting to get involved in Jesus Youth, or you know, whatever the circumstances, I think it just requires of all of us having that openness to the Holy Spirit in that moment. No,
and I think those words are needed, and they're necessary. You know, these are encouraging words for parents of youth that, you know, maybe want their kids to experience the love of Christ. And I think the Jesus Youth movement is a great place to start, and maybe find your place in. So Chris, I want to thank you for being here, for, you know, opening up and sharing your experiences, and to share your words to anyone listening that, you know, that might uplift them, encourage them to give the movement a shot. You know, and why not just try it out, and that way they can experience the Lord's love.
Yeah, and thanks so much for having me. Like I said before, it's funny to be on the other side of these interviews. But it's been cool to share my experiences. And like I said, I'm not some special person here. Like I'm just a Jesus Youth, but I'm happy with that. And the movement's been really good to me. And so I'm happy to give back and encourage other people to check it out.
Yeah, thank you.
From just a Malayalam magazine with circulation mainly in India, Kairos magazines have now reached out to many countries and cultures through the introduction of its English magazine Kairos Global in 2017. Kairos Global is being circulated now in more than 25 countries through print, digital and audio mediums. In 2021, Kairos has come out with a new initiative, a magazine for children of age group 3 to 12 called Kairos Birds, and also Kairos Birds Diary. In the last couple of years, Kairos has also started publishing various books authored by Jesus Youth leaders and mentors.